Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forum Friday. On Forum Fridays, Mark and I talk about what's going on at Forum. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Hey, what do you think of the class yesterday?
It was fantastic. Arnaud he's such a treasure.
Yes, I
It
love
was
it.
great information, really super attendance and great questions and stuff.
We had
No wonder
over
we always run over. It
180
was just so
signups.
interesting, right?
Yeah, we had over 180 signups. It's the most that we have ever had.
Wow,
So
that's fantastic.
I know, and it's one of those things that indicates to me that we just need to do this again. You
Hmm.
know, I think a lot of the questions that came forth were a lot of the quality questions that they don't know who else to ask.
Yep.
Like we saw a common theme around sticky dough and the quality tests that we can run to determine that, right?
Yep.
So
Hmm.
do you remember the ones that talked about, why is my dough sticky?
Yeah, one was asking why is my dough sticky, and they couldn't use any dough improvers and things like that. Well, that goes back to again getting information from the alveograph, from the Mixolab in terms of understanding whether it's a falling number issue, in terms of fermentation, or whether it's a
Starch
protein
damage.
quality issue in terms of how much mixing it can tolerate, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot.
and Arnold had a good point on starch damage as well.
Starch
So,
damage as well, exactly. Yeah. Um,
right.
yeah, it was a lot of interesting questions. I never thought of RVA, but it's that's used just for the starch. But we had that one come up too. So sounded like maybe a lab is trying to use RVA as a shortcut alternative or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
But remember, the RVA is included in the Mixolab.
yes,
It's like
exactly. Yeah,
tail end of the Mixolab
yeah.
lab,
But you
So the
get more
Mixolab
complete
actually,
information. Yeah.
yeah, the Mixolab can actually combine your mixograph, renograph with your RVA so that you get two tests at
Yep.
once.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's a great question too. And I love the question about having a falling number of 500 and above. That's
Hmm.
the first time I've ever heard that. But
Yeah.
Arnaud was correct. It's like anything 400 and above
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is
Yeah,
the
I mean,
same.
most typically what we see here would usually be 250 to 300 max,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. What I
Um,
had problems with previously was, things that were like below 250.
yeah, so way too much enzyme activity.
So,
Um, and
uh,
and that happens, because then, like, the if the feeders are off and you're getting too much amylase being added or barley flour or something, then the falling number is going to be way too low, right?
right. But if you are a miller, right, and you're dealing with 500, 400 falling number, what would you do, Mark?
I would basically look at the feeders first of all, right, and
Okay.
also look at the wheat,
Making
the
sure that they
income.
were working.
Yeah, because usually there's already a certain
Certain.
amount of enzyme activity in the wheat, and it's usually something we're trying to keep managed so that we don't get too much activity, ensuring that the wheat doesn't sprout and tempering and all these types of things, right? That's usually more of the bigger problem. But if you have such high falling numbers, there's got to be an issue somewhere, right?
Right. Yeah. So if you have any more questions from yesterday's
Not
seminar,
from yesterday, no.
I'm letting our viewers know. Go to our forums and
Yes,
post them there so that Mark and I can take a look at it.
yeah.
Mark,
I've
what
asked
else is
Joanna
happening in the
to.
forum?
Yeah, I've asked Joanna to get me the questions that we didn't get to because there were so many, and we had already run over. And the one that just does come to mind, there was a question about internal or external quality, and it's not an either or, it's both, right? And really, you might have priorities because of your customer base, but really you want to look at both of those qualities in terms of the grain, volume, crust color, and all these types of things. And yeah, we'll get these all posted in the forum too to help encourage the conversation further, right? And because that's where everybody just join in. As you could see from, we enjoy all types of questions, and there's always interesting things that we can all learn from each other, and helps us get our thinking caps on to make sure that we don't get, for me, I look at it as that I don't get stale or complacent about things, and it keeps everything going, keeps the wheels turning, right? And we've had some questions in the forum recently. One very recent one is a question on checking the quality of flour that has been chlorinated, and like, how do you check if the chlorination was done correctly? It's an interesting question, because really the only thing that you can check after the fact is pH, right? Because the chlorination will drop the pH, and it's usually going to be somewhere between 4.2 and 4.4. If it's higher than that, there's not enough chlorination. If it's lower than that, it's too much. And chlorination is done originally to bleach a cookie flour or cracker flour, but it also denatures the protein, and so it's used mostly for cakes. It's to make a fine, tender crumb in the cakes, because it lessens the gluten forming properties that way. And it is done on some specialty flours. There is some chlorinated hard wheat flour I've worked with in specialty applications. That gets very finicky. Sometimes if you're off by even 0.1 on the pH, it completely changes the product, and it becomes a real difficult challenge to manage, right?
So you are a miller in your previous life. Why do things happen?
I worked in the milling group, and I like to spend a lot of time at the flour mill.
Why can't just millers just give proper chlorination of the flour and not let the bakers worry about it?
Visiting the mills and things is that to chlorinate the flour, it is done by opening a valve that releases chlorine gas onto the flour stream as it flows through the system down to the holding bin and things like that. So it is one of those, it's an artisanal skill in that sense. It's about basically adjusting the flow of the chlorine gas to match up and sync up with the flow of the flour. So it's a tricky kind of process. It's not just adding a dosage pill. So they have to monitor that and frequently take samples to check it, and to make sure that they're getting enough and not too little chlorine gas on there. So this is
where my question is, and I'm on the baker's side. How can the baker make sure that the miller doesn't give them the wrong amount of chlorination?
Well, it is in most mills, like I know from the mills that I've worked with, is that there are specification standards, and the flour is tested or checked. In this case, it would be checked for pH before it is shipped. In some cases, it's checked before it's even packed, for sack flour and things like that. And so that they make sure that it is within the required specification range. If you know what your quality parameters are, you want to look for that on your certificate of analysis that is shipped with the flour. If you're buying sack flour through a distributor, at least if you're at any case, if you're buying it like in at least pallet quantities, there usually can go back to the miller and say, I need a C of A for this lot, and that you can get it. They might be reluctant to do it if you're only ordering one bag, but you should be able to ask for that, because CFAs are are created, or the information is kept track of on a per lot basis, right? So it is, again, it's communication with your supplier and your miller.
Right. So it's on back to the bakers. Bakers need to look at your CFAs. You need to make sure you implement some kind of quality control. Just buy a pH meter and tell your miller, I am going to do pH on every batch. So once you start doing this and you tell your miller that that's the only thing you're looking at, guess what? They are going to do it too. You know, so they will be monitoring the pH of every batch going out to you because they know that you're looking at the same thing too. So
today there are small portable pH meters that you can buy that are so inexpensive. I mean, you could use test strips to give you a ballpark range, but it's not going to. You'd have to be way off spec before that shows up.
Yeah.
And so in the pH meters, I think they're less than $100.
Oh yeah, it's really easy.
And so it's, you know, and you don't have to go back to school and get a science degree if you don't have the familiarity. It's very easy to use, and it's a very, very useful tool, right?
And if you have any questions on how to run pH on flour, post it on the forum. There's so many of us who have done that before. We'll let you know how to do it.
Yep.
Just go buy that pH meter first. Get absolutely. That stabilized.
And then we have one other conversation that is ongoing. Is if you remember, we this conversation kind of started back in September, I think it was, and it's a gluten-free bakery in the UK in the London area, and they're having exploding bread. If you might, may I share a picture? So
please, because I can't envision.
Because we've had talks going back. Several members have jumped into the conversation and asking about formula, and of course they've been reluctant to share a recipe because gluten-free breads are like a bit of a holy grail for some people. And so we've been having difficulty even imagining what they're talking about. And so here we get a picture now of this exploding bread. And so it's quite interesting. We can see that there's openings here where it's popped open. And on this one, you can really see what I refer to as the shred. I'm theorizing that what must be happening is that the starches that they're using in this are setting in the baking process, and the fermentation is not stopping. And they're still getting fermentation and gas bubbles going, and that is then it just basically pops open at the weakest spot, and causing them to appear as if they have exploded. Right?
You're right, Mark. You're absolutely right. They did not kill their yeast fast enough.
Yeah.
So yeast kill, if you get a thermal profiler that's up here, see the mole?
Yep.
Can indicate to you yeast kill, and for things like that, it looks to me like the yeast kill is 50% further into the baking process.
Yep. And that was also what you had suggested early on in the conversation, is that they look at their thermal profile. So, that's
just really kill the yeast too. Don't forget humidity, right? In the proofer and the oven. What do you think?
That's possible too. Yeah, because there's a let me go back to the picture. There's a lot of flour dust on some of these, whether intended or not. That looks compared to some of them that don't have much flour, that maybe that's a drying of the crust in the proofer, that it's not humid enough.
Yeah, that's true. So you can improve the humidity in your process, so that it doesn't form that skin, and then just make sure that you kill the yeast or the microorganisms early in the baking process by bringing the internal temperature up above 160 as fast as you can.
Yep.
Degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, I know the English are going to be mad at me for using Fahrenheit, but sorry. Oops.
It's just a little bit of math.
It's just a little bit of math.
160s, what, like 68, something like that?
I'll just ask Siri. So, lots happening over the forum. We're getting a ton of signups. And I think people are pretty happy in the way that you are creating this community, Mark.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying. I'm really trying to encourage everybody to feel it's a safe place to have any kind of conversation. And so far, that's been going pretty good. We with Joanna's help and the IT guys, we've been keeping the spammers at bay. That's been great too, because I see that on some other message boards. They get in there and they make a mess of things. And
yeah, we're pretty good at keeping those people out.
Yeah, so it's been great. It's been really great.
Yeah, we keep the trolls out too. All right. Well, thank you for coming on to this week's Friday Forum, Mark.
Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.